Hi. In this chapter, we will have a look at the game between Anatoly Karpov and Jan Timman, played in 1979 in Montreal. So in this game, Karpov was white and played e4 to start the game, and Timman played the Pirc defense. So d6, d4, knight f6, knight c3, g6, and Karpov played g3, which is a quiet line against the Pirc. If I remember well, he used to play knight f3, bishop e2, and castle setup. But g3 is interesting, with the idea to develop the bishop on g2, keeping the e4 pawn even more protected, and to develop then the knight on e2 to keep the diagonal open for the bishop. Black played bishop g7, bishop g2, castle, knight g2, e5 was played, and Karpov castled, and here Timman didn't choose the best setup. He played knight a6. If you've seen the DVD I made on the Pirc defense, I consider this move to be the best and putting immediate some pressure on the d4 pawn and white center, and bishop e3 isn't possible for the moment because there's some knight g4, so this would be the best move for black, but Timman played knight a6, so I guess that he has some idea to come back to c5 one day. Anyway, Karpov developed with rook e1. So you can see that the rook improved. On e1 it's on a better square than on f1. And also white thinks about overprotection on the e4 spot. c6 was played, and h3, which is start of some prophylaxis. So h3 is a good move because it's limiting the scope of the bishop on c8, and at the same time, when the bishop will go to e3, white has not to worry about some move like knight g4. So that's a good move. Black played rook e8, so we can see that there will be a big battle about this e4 pawn and e4 square, because black wants to put all his pieces to attack it, so white has to be careful. Here I like white's maneuver, which is bishop g5, h6, and bishop e3. So why losing a tempo and not going to e3 immediately? Oh, because if black plays queen c7 like in the game and white play queen d2 in order to play rook a d1, then black has time and will not waste a move to protect a pawn here. So by seemingly losing one tempo and going to g5 then to e3, white is actually winning one tempo. You can see. So black played queen c7 here, and white played queen d2, attacking the pawn on h6. So black has to protect this pawn, and they did it with king h7, then rook a d1, and black played bishop d7. So the opening stage is done, is over, and white has to think, what do I want to do? And of course, white wants to make progress on the king side, and play f4 and g4 and maybe continue, let's see. But usually in this kind of position, white plays g4 and h3 to overprotect e4, and also with these 2 pawns, as we said, we can advance. So which one to start with, f4 or g4? And Karpov chose g4, which is actually the best. And when he made some comments about his game, he said that f4 would be illogical because anyway, he will have to play g4 and g3 at some stage of the game, and playing f4 right now is increasing some pressure on the position, and he's not quite ready for it, and he prefers to play the move he knows he has to play, so g4 and g3, and then f4 anyway will follow. So that's why, and that's really interesting to have Karpov thoughts. So rook a8 was played, then knight g3, bishop c8, so the bishop was on the way of the rook, and now f4. So black played b5, so he intends to play b4, chasing this knight away and maybe putting more pressure on e4, so of course a3. Then black played b4, pawn takes, knight takes. And here, one more time, Karpov wrote, he thought, what can black play? What is his idea? And he thought that black wants to play a5, then developing the bishop and a6, so a5 to protect this knight, actually. because after bishop a6, then the knight couldn't have any squares to go back, so it's a better idea to protect it first with a5. So a5, bishop a6, then taking on d4, and playing c5, attacking the bishop here, and maybe going back with the knight to c6, and finding some kind of harmony in the position. And he didn't wanted to let this happen, and he played knight e2. So the idea is to attack the knight, to chase it with c3, at the same time reinforcing the center, so that is a good idea. And of course, if black plays a5 now, just c3, and the knight has to go to a6, then you can see white center is very solid. The knight has no future here, and also the bishop cannot develop on a6. And then white will have time to think about how would I attack on the king side with f5, with g5, and so on. So white is clearly better. Yeah, so Timman chose to take on d4, knight takes, then playing a5 now. So Karpov played c3, and then knight a6. And now there is a great move, I have to say, great move from white. Yeah, okay, of course, black's next move would be to play knight c5. And that's how you have to think if you want to include this prophylactic thinking into your play, what my opponent wants to play. So, okay, of course he wants to play knight c5, and then the knight on c5, and the knight on f6, and the rook on a8 will attack the pawn on e4. So that would be some problem for me, or at least I will have to react about this. So Karpov thought, okay, how can I avoid it? And he found this really nice move, queen c2. So the idea is not just to overprotect e4, because after knight c5, of course, the pawn now is protected 3 times, so we don't have to care about it right now. But the idea actually is to play b4 if what black comes here. And the problem for black is that if they takes, pawn takes, then the knight will have to go somewhere, and c6 is hanging, so black lose 1 pawn. So actually knight c5 is just impossible to play. And of course, if black just move away with the knight, white can take on a5, queen takes doesn't work because there's this fork. So by playing queen c2, white protects the pawn, but it's not just to play some passive move to protect. Actually, it's great move because this knight cannot come into play, so this knight is really passive. The queen here is on a nice square because protects e4, but at the same time, I am the same diagonal of the king. So who knows if this pawn might not be pinned at some stage with some h4, h5, or some knight h5, or we don't know yet, but for sure the queen is on a good square, the knight isn't, and black cannot play knight c5. So that's why queen c2 is so strong. So, okay, Timman played some move, bishop d7. And Karpov wanted to take his time and to put more pressure. So he brings back the knight to f3, keeping his option of g5 or e5. Of course, no, you don't have to be as patient as Karpov is. And if you think that you would go for g5 here, actually it's a good move. And sometimes you have to go forward for sure. But knight f3 is a good move because if black comes to c5 now, actually that's the idea behind bishop d7, to protect c6 and to play knight c5, because now after b4 the pawn wouldn't be hanging. So yeah, by playing knight f3, actually Karpov still doesn't want to see this knight appears on c5, because if knight c5, he wants to play e5, and the difference with this knight here or here is that the bishop is on an open diagonal and black cannot take here because the knight would be hanging. So of course he cannot. So he has to move this knight, and now, for example, white could train the knight with a nice pawn structure, playing knight h5. So now we can see that queen c2 is useful. Let's say bishop h8 and move like knight h4 is really strong, bringing then the bishop to e4 and having some idea of sacrifice on g6, and maybe some f5 is coming, and black is just completely crushed here. So knight f3 is another prophylactic move from Karpov, and the knight stays on a6. Here Timman played rook e7, and Karpov played another quiet move, which is very instructive one more time. So one more time, he thought, yeah, why this move rook e7? What does he want? Because yeah, if I were white, maybe I would like to play queen d3, attacking the knight, attacking d6. But black has one defensive move, which is bishop c8. And okay, maybe we can try some e5, but it would maybe complicated the position after d5 and some knight e4 and stuff like this. And the knight is protected, this pawn is protected, so queen d3 isn't a decisive blow. But yeah, if it was black to play, what would he like to play? Maybe he would like to play rook d8, putting more pressure here, and that's why he played rook 7. Yeah, makes sense. But then, if I manage to play queen d3, I attack this knight, I attack this pawn, and there is no more some bishop c8 protecting everything. So maybe I can find something to protect this pawn, and then he cannot play this. And that's what Karpov played with bishop f2. Because if rook e8, then queen d3 is really strong. Because the knight is under attack, the pawn is under attack, and black cannot protect everything, of course. So rook e8 doesn't work, so okay, Timman played bishop e8, thinking maybe, okay, I can bring this knight somewhere, why not? But the problem of this move is that one more time, after queen d3, there is no more bishop c8. So this apparently waiting move just improves white's position and lets black somehow suffocate. And so the knight is under attack, so okay, black has to protect it. But now the queen doesn't protect a5, and this simple move rook a1 wins the pawn. Black cannot take the pawn on b2 because, okay, rook b1 or queen takes a6. So knight c7, rook takes a5, and one more time, queen takes b2 doesn't work because the queen is trapped. So yeah, Timman played a move like this. b4 was played, but okay, you can see white just won one pawn. Keep in mind they might start his attack here, but they just dominated completely black in this game, and black couldn't play any single active move. They wanted to. They tried to go to c5 with the knight, to push c5, to double rook on the e file, but each time Karpov saw it in front and anticipate, and black couldn't do nothing. So now I'll go more quickly because white's advantage is obvious. They won one pawn, they can invade black's camp from the queen side or push on the king side. So many possibilities. Yeah, bishop e3 just protect the pawn. c5 was played. f5, knight away, b5 now to avoid knight c6 and creating a passer. King h8, bishop f2 one more time, overprotecting the pawn. Because right now, when the king was there, it was not possible for black to take here, because after, let's say, knight takes, queen takes, there is knight g5 check, and winning the queen. So by playing king h8, black wants to avoid some knight g5 check and some discovery attack. So that's why bishop f2 back is played. Queen c7, attack the rook, rook back, queen b8, c4, protecting everything, rook a7, take, and decisive break in the center, e5, pawn takes, knight takes, rook a2 was played, and bishop takes c5, winning a second pawn, and black resigned in this position. But that was really a good game by Karpov. I liked the way he fought and the way he played to avoid black's play, and I found this game very inspirational when I was a teenager, and I saw it for the first time, and still now I see a lot of beauty in this game, and that impressed me a lot. And yeah, I hope it will help you. And now we'll have a look at another game of Karpov. Yeah, as I said, he was maybe the best chess player in history in prophylactic play. Also, I can think about Petrosian and other very good positional players. But yeah, it's quite useful to see and study a game of those players.